And welcome to Curmudgeon in the Cellar number 109. Not to be confused with the Messerschmitt 109. Let's see, I hardly know where to start tonight. I think I'm going to start with something that came up a week or two ago. It began, and it was on a Facebook thread. One of the first editions. I don't know if it was first edition uncensored, whatever. And it had to do with fudging die rolls as a DM. And I'm going to pull myself up here a little closer. I very candidly said, absolutely. I would do it any time that it was called for to preserve the narrative. Well, set off a firestorm. I was accused of writing railroad or running or creating railroad adventures. No, a railroad adventure is when in module 1 they say, no, you can't kill this guy because he's got to do something in module 3. Now, there were a couple of editions that shared the number 3 that I believe were notorious for that kind of silly shit, and 4 was just as bad. That's a railroad. You can only do this, you can only do that. What I do at conventions is a railroad because it's the wheel of blame, and you have to pass test after test after test. Now, I took great exception to being accused of that. And it seemed to me that an awful lot of the knuckleheads and knotheads that responded indignantly don't even understand the definition of the word narrative. So I looked up several different dictionaries in that. And the best set I could come up with is a story or account of events, experiences, or the like, whether true or fictitious. The art, technique, or process of narrating or of telling a story. A story that connects and explains a carefully selected set of supposedly true events, experiences, or the like, intended to support a particular viewpoint or thesis. Okay, now all of these are assuming normal fiction. So we're going to go with fantasy. Now, who writes the narrative? That's the comment that I made. And we'll get back to why fudging is important to the narrative. I don't write the narrative. In my opinion, no good DM writes the narrative. The DM presents some problems, some puzzles, establishes some parameters, where they're at, what time of the year, parameters, okay, sets the stage. But this is ad lib. This is improv. We don't write what happens from that point on. We don't write that when they come to the first three-way crossroads, they take the right one, the one on the right. We don't know which one they're going to take, so we are prepared to let it go. The players construct the narrative. They are writing the story as they go. If there were little invisible bards and little invisible plastic capsules that were impervious to everything, they'd be writing all this down. They'd be recording the narrative. But it's the players that construct the narrative. I don't make the narrative as the DM. What a boring piece of crap that would be. If I said, hi, here's my story, I'm going to run you through it chapter by chapter and limit you to what I'd already conceived of. Bullshit. I can't imagine anything more boring. Now, let's get into, now that we've established what I mean and who I think constructs the narrative, why would a DM fudge a die roll? All right, we'll stop there and say, why are we all here at the table? We're here to have fun. Okay? Should be here to have fun. The story's going along. Great thing. Oh, a couple of astonishing things have happened. And for whatever reason, a pre-existing condition that they trigger or whatever, the worst, most catastrophic event could be ready to happen and kill half or more of the party. Or, ooh, it almost happened. And instead of the cavern the ground opening up and swallowing everybody, rocks fell from the ceiling and you had to scurry out of there. So I rolled a 3. Oh, God, it's going to open up and they're going to die. And that's on a percentile, 03. Or I can say, it's a 13. And they won't die, but they might get bunged up some, and some of them might get hurt. But the story will continue. I'll be honest with you. I've participated in TPKs on both sides of the table. And TPK stories get pretty damn boring up to, after a couple of recitations, you're dead. Glorious deaths notwithstanding, the stories that are told are the ones about the time you defeated the mind flayer, or you outwitted the ogres and therefore avoided being turned to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I see it as my role as the DM. I'm orchestrating the fun. They're making the cookies. I'm just throwing out ingredients, and then they're thinking up other ingredients to throw into it. And so the finished product is much more a result of their actions, their additions, their input, than it was with me saying, okay, here's the deal. This guy's bad. He's kidnapped so-and-so, yada-da-da-do, and off we go. And we're going to go underground to find him. And, whatever your storyline, simple or complex, you can't make them go where you want. It is a simple fact. And anybody that said they've never, if anybody with any DM experience says that's never happened to them, they go somewhere you didn't want, you didn't plan on, they don't take the left-hand fork and find the big important clue. Any DM that's got any time under their belts at all is going to say that's happened. It's just one of the great frustrations, but one of the things that makes being a DM fun is, okay, damn, they didn't go that way. I got to extemporize now because we're going to play another couple hours tonight. So, okay, here we go. I would never fudge the other way against the players. I'm not a sociopath. I'm not a sadist. Why would I inflict even minor psychic wounds? You brush them off, okay, the character said. Other people, we know the wounds go much deeper. Why would I want to do that? So those people on old Benny's thread, number one, before you criticize somebody, find out what the words they're using mean. And then I'll simply say that I've discussed this with several other people that run games, and absolutely everyone has said that anybody that says they never finished a die roll is a liar, a fibber, a fudger, whatever. Okay, I don't mean to sound condemnatory at all, because, hey, we're there to orchestrate and kind of manage the fun and keep it from going off the rails. Somebody went on there and said, oh, I would feel cheated if I found out later that that had happened. Oh, really? Come on. If that's the case, get a life. Lecture over. Oh, another explanation. My eyes look particularly bad tonight. If I start daubing at them, I have a condition named dry eye, which is the worst, most obviously wrong name for anything I've ever caught. My eyes think they're dry and they start tearing. It literally runs late at night and very early in the morning, like when I'm reading the newspaper. They get like this. It has nothing to do with the buzz. Okay, we're talking about random encounters, and the individual, and it's a good point, mentions that some people forget the reaction roll after they roll for a random encounter. Of course. Just because you run into something doesn't mean you got to kill it. Just maybe you saw it first and you're able to remain undetected. That's even better. Hide in the alcove while the patrol of guards marches by. Even better. Even better. Oh, okay. Have I ever come across or got a chance to play a board game called Descent? No. Like you, I think my hierarchy of gaming interest starts with boards, then miniatures, to RPG. But when I came across this game a while back, I found it very interesting because it had elements of all three. Oh, that'd be like Escape from Dulce. It's a board game that uses minis, but would only be like an RPG if you just played encounters. One main difference, it pits the DM against the players. Well, that's nice and honest. I don't believe I've actually played this game. God knows, I probably only got 10 or 15, if I'm lucky, years left. And I've got games in my basement right now over there that I won't get to play before I die. I won't have time to learn them and play them, half a dozen times to say I know them. I wish I did. I wish somebody would just pay me to sit around and play games and write about them, like I'd be a reviewer. I'd do that, but then I'd have to find people to play with all the time. And that's hard to do because most everybody I know has a real job. I did play a game, though, where it was a board game where everybody's running up out of the dungeon to keep from being eaten, and all you had to do is be faster than the other guys. No, I haven't played that, but I really, I've talked before about this. I really enjoy games that are melding elements of all three together. Escape from Dulce being a primary one. Scythe a little less so, but I find that those of us that play regularly together tend to start playing. Each time we get a different race, we play that race the same way again and again, just because it's fun. DM against the players. Well, that's out in the open, isn't it? It's kind of like the old game of snit smashing. It was the snits against the Plotamus, and the Plotamus, more often than not, smashed all the snits. After a while, that's why we invented, and Tom wrote up Snit's Revenge, so you could get even. Okay, back about the campaign I talked about last time about the orcs going on to great success and everything. The gentleman pointed out that it wasn't an all-orc campaign. That's my mistake. It was a multiple campaign of all kinds of races. And this side thing came about as successful negotiation between races. As far as I'm concerned, that makes it even neater, because those are the kind of nuances and the depth and the flavor profile of a great campaign. Let's see. Let's go on to the next page. How long have I been talking? Okay. Did TSR ever consider making an RPG that was based on strategy games rather than dungeons? I'm not even sure what this question means. If I wanted to be the Scotty dog and you wanted to be the shoe, I guess we could play Monopoly and see if there's anything waiting for us on Baltic Avenue that we had to fight before we could build our cabin. I'm sorry. I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of myself. I really don't understand what you mean. We didn't just explore dungeons. We had ruins and castles and outdoor adventures and everything. Of course, it's the name Dungeons, and Dragons has it ingrained. But most of what I write and have written in the last 10 years is all heavily in outdoor elements, if not completely outdoor. Oh, and to answer another question, some of my stuff is available on Drive-Thru RPG or through Noble Knights. The stock is dwindling. Let's see. I absolutely agree on the cleanup definition of second edition. They reorganized the rules to better understand, particularly for players, in my opinion. Reading 2E was a bit more dry than 1E, but it was much easier to pick up and learn. That's a very accurate assessment. It was easier, and you all know I'm talking about. I love Gary to death. We reconciled before the end, and I found out, what happened and how he was powerless to prevent it. I love him to death, but when they took out all the Gygaxian, of course, it got easier to read. Put it into more common man English, and it was a lot easier to read. I can still fall into Gygaxian when I'm writing, but when I find myself doing that, I try to slip right out as quickly as I can. Though it is fun to write that way. And yeah, I thought Second edition did a good job at straightening things out and making it easier. Now I had an enigmatic comment. It simply said, Shift 7. Well, yeah, that's where the ampersand is. I guess everybody knows now. If you're looking for the ampersand, it's on Shift 7. Thanks for that tip. What was the most out there, in your opinion, concept for a campaign setting that you've ever conceived but never fully developed above the initial idea? Well, I have an idea about, not so much out there with weird, tentacled, bug-eyed things. I have an idea of doing time travel adventures. I'd send you to the Central America, and at the declining decades of the Mayan civilization, and you would then find yourself fighting people dressed in feathers with stone weapons. All your weapons would have been you wouldn't take anything with you that was heavily anachronistic, except anyway, your money would be turned into trade goods that were, cocoa beans and feather bundles and what have you. And you'd have to figure out, not that you were in the Mayas, but you just have to figure out an entirely new culture. I would use the Mayan monsters of myth. So nobody would go, oh, that's a so-and-so when I described it. Wandering monsters would be Aztec parties of varying temperaments, as well as other Indians and jaguars and stuff from the jungle. Then I want to write one about going to the Cahokia Mound culture. You can look that up, Cahokia, Cahokia Mound culture, which was a huge culture that existed in Indiana and Illinois and area around it, that built these enormous mounds, and then they were gone. And then I have a third one in mind to send you out, again with time traveling, to the Mandans, out just about the time that Lewis and Clark ran into them. Still, maybe a little before that, pre-firearms. But then again, the players would have to, instead of becoming fighters, they'd have to become traders. They'd have to be able to defend themselves. They'd have to figure out how to get along. It would be role-playing of something other than fighting. It'd be about diplomacy and studying the culture and fitting into it. And the easiest way to do that would be to make them all into traders, change their appearances by their garb into, I discovered a near mythical race that lived above the Incas in the Andes. And they'd be the perfect, anyway, that's something I've toyed with, but I'm getting to the point where I need an amanuensis or somebody like that to start doing these heavy duty new things. I'm just not, either not fired up enough or not capable. I'm not sure which yet. Okay, there was a game that you had with magical honeycombs or magical honeys. It's a treasure. And if I remember, they had no way to transport it. Tell us about that game, please. Okay, that's one that may yet get published. It's called The Secret of Sweet Mead Abbey. And see, in my world, there's this big cataclysmic thingy that happened when magicians cracked open shut they shouldn't have cracked open. And a huge portion of the world in the cataclysmic winds and weather patterns was completely buried in sand over a very short period of time. But the legend of the Abbey was that they made this incredible mead that each year got shipped out by the people of the Abbey, and the wagons that came back to the Abbey were heavily escorted by very professional guards because they were loaded with money. And of course, then what they do with all that money. So the Abbey has become more readily available, visible. Parts of it are now sand-free. And you find out that the secret of the Abbey is, the mead is that they raise their bees on flowers and plants that are considered useful in medical alchemy. The Spaewives apothecary, herbalist stuff. And so the bees' honey had these qualities, and that's why it sold for such amazing amount of money. And the secret is that there was a huge underground aviary complex, and they had these amazing cylinders up above that caught sunlight and focused it down there, so it was like a giant underground greenhouse. And over this period of time, the bees have gotten to be like the size of small Cocker Spaniels. And, hey, a regular bumblebee can't fly. Why get picky? And the plants have mutated, and so now they make honey that's very curative, honey that's very poisonous. And I don't know, I don't recall at the moment. Anyway, there's all these dripping, pack-free honeycombs once you figure out how to get to the other side of the cavern over the stream bed, and how you calm down the bees enough. And then there was literally gallons and gallons and gallons of honey worth its weight in gold, or even its weight in gemstones, and no buckets, no pails, no nothing. But see, we, meaning the old school gamers back in the day, we used to do stuff like that so that you'd go back. You'd go back and you get a train of mules and you buy all the barrels, and all that. And you'd go back, and then there'd be choices and chances for more encounters and more adventures. And then, you'd come back, and it'd be, it'd be hard to get back because all that honey in wood barrels would attract sturges, or who knows what they would attract. So that's what it was. The Secret of Sweet Mead Abbey. And someday I hope to publish that formally. It's only been done by my under my house imprint, and very, very, very limited copies. Okay. This is a long question. I'm trying to jump through some of it here. Next to last. I only recently got reinterested in RPG, tabletop gaming, and never knew much about the inner workings of TSR and the politics till I got curious discovering you and your co-workers' interviews within the past 3 months. It's good to know you and Gary made amends before he passed. Wish I could get around to visiting Gary Con sometime and discover some of the Swiss heritage of Wisconsin. We'll stop right there. Pardon me. Throat oil. I never went much up past the middle of Wisconsin when I lived there. However, I did go west over into what they call New Wisconsin. It's very hilly, very beautiful. There used to be lots and lots of dairy farms. The center of it all is New Bern, Wisconsin, all like Swiss Alps architecture, and lots of little touristy shops, and some, sorry, it's a dry eye. Lots of little touristy shops, and now they have some great breweries, including the official beer of Gary Con, Spotted Cow, which you can't buy anywhere outside the state of Wisconsin, which is why I always bring back at least a 12-pack to enjoy over the summer every time I go, and try to get another 12-pack when I'm at Game Hole. Let's see, what else? They make a lot of cheese in Wisconsin, obviously. Pretty Swiss, pretty dairy cowish. And he always suspected that someday Gary might do some imagining defending the old early Confederacy of medieval Swiss England. This gentleman also has some Swiss Mennonite ancestry from the canton of Bern, but I don't know Gary's canton. I don't know which canton he comes from. Maybe Ernie or Luke do. The politics suck, but it happens all the time. People get mad at each other when the money starts coming in. Okay, this is what I guess. Oh, this is the second last thing. You suggested that OD&D is your favorite, but up to AD second edition is fine too. Is there anything missing from second edition or something you didn't like added? I've read more into random encounters, and I think I would like to try running dungeons as turn-based to help keep track of random encounters. Also, the Last Viking sounds okay. This will address this last thing for Last Viking is actually Last Kingdom on Netflix. Yes, correct. I misspoke on that. Thank you. And I've still got to watch the last two of the last season. I'm just so reluctant to see it end. And then I just read the newest Cornwell book from which this is based, called The Sword of Kings, and it's good. It's good. Uhtred, son of Uhtred of Bebbanburg, is dashing and swashbuckling again. Okay. where my love of role-playing frozen amber was just as it was getting to the, oh yeah, pull this, add this, take away that, put this in. And pretty much the reason we had to put out first edition to rein in where I was at. And lots of other people too. And most of them looked at first and said, okay. And they became first edition players, and that's fine. I just stuck it in glass when I could do whatever the hell I wanted. I could completely ignore the Fiend Folio, which I thought was the silliest book TSR put out for years. All those silly British monsters. Flump. A marshmallow cloud that eat your head. Give me a break. That's why I kind of said, okay, I'll take what I want and I'll use what I want, but I'm not going to be bound by canon. That's all. And one last thing, and this is an advanced plug for my admitted friend, Jim Wampler. He's got a new Kickstarter in the works. I'm right now over halfway through editing the 120-page manuscript, which means it's going to be a big book. And it's got more art than you can shake two sticks at by a bunch of different people. So there's a lot of interesting styles and contrasts in here, and a lot of it. It's called Fight This Monster, and it's post-apocalyptic. I'm having fun, and I'm really worried. Because as y'all know, Jim's my wingman. And I'm finding out just how twisted and devious and sadistic and merciless he can be. Whew. And people think I'm nasty. And on that note, I'll say Dodada Gobi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard grave. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.